When you think about super successful businesses that are selling through the roof like Heinz or Mattel, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But there's a secret. The business behind the business making selling simple for them and buying simple for their customers. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout as Heinz and Mattel. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/promo.
Yeah, sure thing.
Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah?
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
Wow. What's up?
I just bought and financed a car through Carvana in minutes.
You? The person who agonized 4 weeks over whether to paint your walls eggshell or off-white bought and financed a car in minutes?
They made it easy. Transparent terms, customizable down and monthly. Didn't even have to do any paperwork.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Hey, have you checked out that spreadsheet I sent you for our dinner options?
Finance your car with Carvana and experience total control. Financing subject to credit approval.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind a beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Sorry, Kieran, there's a slightly hesitant start there because we still haven't resolved 5 days in this slight technical issue where my screen disappears when I try and bring my script up. Maybe some of our listeners could help because God knows, Ali and Ed are fed up trying to help me. They've given up. They're leaving me to it, Kieran. They're letting me wallow in the 19th century. How are you this morning?
All is irritatingly tickety-boo.
Good. Well, unfortunately, Kieran, talking of tickety-boo, we do. I think we have to start with some sad news.
Yes.
Because I think people will want to know this. This time last week, we were interviewing John Attenborough, a lovely young blind Scottish football fan, and he was telling us about his adventures travelling around every football ground in Scotland with his guide dog Sam, with a book coming out, and it was a lovely, upbeat, positive interview. And then we had the heartbreaking news from him yesterday, Kieran, that Sam had suddenly passed away yesterday morning, and John is he's absolutely bereft, as we both were when we discovered it yesterday. So we send all our love to John. We really do. Kieran, Guy and I, and I'm sure everybody who listens to that interview will share with us in sending love to John. I don't know how these things work, Kieran. I know you can't just buy somebody another guide dog, but I've seen the adverts on telly. Maybe Price of Football can swing to sponsoring a guide dog. It doesn't seem to be that expensive. Maybe we can do that.
Yeah, that sounds a really good idea.
Yeah, so maybe we could do that in memory of Sam, and and also people can buy the book. It's out on May the 1st. That'll be a fitting tribute to John and his adventures with his beloved guide dog. It's Questions Day, Kieran. My first question goes to Sky Sports and various commentators in asking why they thought everybody outside Liverpool wanted Newcastle to win that game yesterday. It's astonishing, sentimental, one-eyed, romantic coverage. It's basically, you know, it's like in the way for I don't care which multi-billionaire-owned club win the third most important trophy in the country, Kieran. All I care about is that it's not a Palace Brighton FA Cup final. Essentially.
Yes.
So, and congratulations to Newcastle. They fully deserved it.
Absolutely.
Liverpool didn't turn up, and Newcastle were very, very good. But why? Why Sky thought there'd be street parties everywhere outside the North East? I don't know. I imagine the people of Sunderland feel the same way as I do, Kieran.
Yes, ironically, I was contacted by the Sunderland Echo during the match.
Oh no!
For some comments on Sunderland's accounts.
Oh, great.
So that's how much focus was taking place on the cup final itself.
Oh, hats off to the Sunderland Echo. That's an act of defiance, isn't it? No, we're not watching it. We're not watching it. Get Maguire on the phone. Who's That's very funny. Maybe the people of Sunderland don't know the result yet. That'd be. I particularly like this, the Sky commentator and his comments about Ed shouting at the TV. It's not the 1890s. It's clearly implying that the clog-footed walk along the cobbles to the factories of Newcastle will be a much more cheery one today. That productivity will be up in the factories of Newcastle. So, oh, for the love of God, what's Finley barking at?
We've got a new postman.
No, what's happened to Kev?
No. I was apparently postmen get shifted around. The post office don't like them getting too familiar.
Yeah, in case they get too fond of their guards. Is that what it is?
That's right.
What do you mean the post office don't like them getting too familiar with what? Has he been winking at the Baroness? That sort of thing.
But he's taken on Kevin's mantle by wearing shorts, despite the fact that it's about 5 degrees outside.
They used to wear a uniform nowadays, didn't they, postmen? Yeah. Anyway, our first question.
In the 1890s, would it? Wouldn't that be in the 1890s on Sky? Peter Drury wouldn't have been happy with that, would he?
Perhaps they'll have if Palace do get to the final, perhaps they'll have a montage of Croydon through the ages, and it will include a postman wearing a proper uniform and saluting as you go by, like they should still be doing, and coming at the same time every day. Can you imagine that, Kieran? Lachlan Norton has our first question, and Lachlan is a long-time Australian listener of ours, Kieran, and Lachlan has asked if you can tell him about the current state of the Australian A-League finances, please. Football in Australia, he says, has a long history of struggling financially, but I'd be keen to hear the current state of play. How much money is the league losing every year? That's a pessimistic view right from the start there, Lachlan. Is the league's plan to keep expanding despite those losses financially sound? Why is it struggling so much despite there being a salary cap? Last year, for example, the league had to lay off its entire media arm to cut costs. I think the salary cap one is a particularly interesting one to look at as well, amongst all the others, Kieran, because it's something we've been talking about in European leagues for a while.
Yes, I think it's fair to say that the A-League is fighting for space. Australia, as we know, is a sports-mad country, but football is, to a certain extent, seen as a minority sport. If we take a look at the A-League, there's only 4 clubs who are generating crowds of more than 10,000. The average is around about 8,000. Less than a year ago, the equivalent of their Premier, the A-League, had to cut the amount of distribution it gave to individual clubs from 2 million Australian dollars, so that's about £1 million. I think it's $2 to the pound over there, to 530,000. So that was a 75% reduction in distribution. Things have not been going well for a few years. In 2021, the American private equity company Silver Lake, who have a stake in Manchester City, they did put in 140 million Australian dollars, but I don't know how that has been spent or whether it's been spent particularly well. They have tried, as Lachlan was saying, to expand the league. I think they've now got a team from Auckland in order to encourage. And I believe that there was an attempt for a club in Canberra to join the league this season, but that's failed. So they're pushing it back. So trying to work out the opportunities in what is a fairly crowded broadcasting space at weekends, and you've got Aussie rules, and you've got rugby league, and you've got rugby union and cricket as well. These are all big sports as far as Australia is concerned. Is a challenge. Lots of Australian fans have affections for Premier League clubs and clubs in the European leagues as well. So the viewing figures for those eat into sort of the domestic leagues. Although, of course, as you and I know from being men of a certain age, the Australian season was always one which took place in the summer, because that's when our mum and dad used to do the Australian pools. And we get familiar with the names of Australian clubs. So I think it's a genuine challenge. There are some possible ways out. The Asian Champions League, which Australian clubs can normally qualify for, they've got considerable prize money. And also, I know we've been talking about this recently on sort of the news shows. If an A-League team qualified for the Club World Cup, that would give them somewhere in the region of, I'd imagine about 80 million Australian dollars just as an entry fee. And that goes back to what we were talking about last week, that there is a concern that participation in the FIFA Club World Cup could mean that an individual club in an individual country would earn a multiple of revenue from that 4-week tournament as for all of the other clubs in the league. And could that therefore create dynasties, which, again, are probably not good for competitive balance? If you are a growing product, you need to have competitive balance. If the same club wins the competition every year, then the danger is that fans will simply find something else to watch.
I'd love to talk to somebody from the Australian A-League about this, Kieran, except for the fact that it means either they or us would have to get up really early in the morning. It'd have to be them. I'm just putting that out now, Kieran, if they do want to talk to us. I suppose part of the problem in Australia is it's a huge country, but the population isn't that big, is it? And as you say, a lot of that population will be football mad, but they'll be watching Greek teams or Serbian teams in local leagues, possibly, rather than their nearest A-League team. And you mentioned the Australian pool. That's the worst part. You know how much I hate summer.
Yes, I do.
It was every single week that the Australian football pools came through the door was a week of horror and hate for me. The week that the Australian football pools came through and it had the Charity League on it as the first game was like, that was ironically a glimmer of light that winter was coming. But I remember this is an indication of how relatively new the Australian football as a big entity is, because I remember an expose in a Sunday newspaper back in the 70s saying all this money was being bet on Australian pools, and it showed some photographs of the games that money was being bet on, and they were Sunday league games. They were games with no crowd, no stadium. Some of them, it didn't stop my dad doing it. I could never understand why he did spot the ball either, because that was impossible to win. But it does indicate that, as you say, in a country that loves its sport but tends to love other sports first, it's still finding its feet, isn't it?
It is. I think it will struggle. The established Australian sports are fantastic. They do generate great crowds, and therefore they generate good viewing figures as well. To a certain extent, it's like GAA in Ireland, in the sense that Ireland's a sports-mad country, but the domestic football there compared to GAA is very, very small, and opportunities for growth are therefore very limited because the local TV stations have a limited budget and they go where the existing viewers are.
Yeah, and yet Ireland keeps producing brilliant footballer after brilliant footballer, doesn't it? It's a strange one.
Yeah, and the Irish clan, of which we are both part, is often attracted back to the old country. You've only got to look at the side under Jack Charlton to notice that.
Our next question, Kieran, comes from Max Boutet. And I know it's pronounced Max Boutet because Max very kindly provided a pronunciation for me, which is fantastic. I'm sorry if I made it sound rather camp when I said Max Boutet. But it's a cracking name, isn't it? It sounds like either James Bond's hairdresser or a proper James Bond villain, one or the other. I'd be happy to have a name like Max. But say about the name Max, I don't know. It worked for Homer Simpson, didn't it, when he changed his name to Max Power?
Yes.
Max Day doesn't sound so good, does it? Max Maguire sounds good. God, turn it up to Max Maguire. Turn Maguire up to 11, Max Maguire. That's a great name. It's a good question as well from Max. Max says, which clubs have received the most fines from UEFA for incidents regarding its supporters in UEFA competitions?
Well, this is very much an ongoing issue, as recently as the round of 16 that we've just had. I believe that Bayern Munich have been fined €63,000 for the use of pyros, and that does seem to be a particular issue as far as UEFA is concerned. I think the issue of pyros is that they're great until they're not great, and when they're not great, they're very bad. Does it look spectacular? Absolutely. Bayern are also under effectively a suspended sentence, which could amount to a 3-sided closure of their stadium. But looking, and that would be far more of a financial hit than a fine itself, of course, if you're not able to play. If we go back to the most recent Euros, I think the total fines there for fan behaviour exceeded more than €1 million. But looking at clubs, based on my figures, and I don't keep a spreadsheet on this, but it does appear that Celtic are the club which has had the most fines. This is for issues such as blocking passageways, a fan on a pitch, admittedly it was a young fan, again, the use of pyros, provocative messages. Celtic fans are quite politicised, and I think somebody lobbed a smoke bomb onto the pitch at Villa Park. Having had 1 year's experience of Europe, it's certainly very different to what we used to hear domestically. And UEFA clearly is trying to make the clubs take greater responsibility for the behaviour of the fans, which is a very difficult thing to do because the enterprising nature of many fans is that they can smuggle things into grounds with a fair amount of organisation. And you and I have both been subject to what we might refer to as the most half-hearted of inspections when walking into a ground. And if you know which gates are the easiest ones to get through, that those can be targeted.
Yeah, cursory, I think is the word you're looking for, Kieran.
Yes.
The amount of spreadsheets you managed to smuggle into a game without the stewards finding them. I've got a mate who can show you how to smuggle in 12 miniature bottles of Jack Daniel's Tennessee Honey without you know who I'd if UEFA are listening to this, and for the most part, we get on better with UEFA than we do with FIFA, Kieran. I'll get me bigging myself up, but if UEFA are listening to this, I'll tell you who I would find. There's a Real Madrid. Every single kid who goes into a European game with a placard saying, "Can I have your shirt?"
Oh, yes.
Just find them. Just to make that, immediately find them. Well, not the kid. It's not the kid's fault, is it? It's clearly the parent who, for some reason, thinks that buying 2 tickets for a massive game is the cheaper option than buying an actual replica shirt. There was one last week, Mbappe saying, "We've travelled from Australia. Can we have your shirt?" It's like, how many shirts could you have bought with the money you've spent travelling from Australia? Dads, and it's always dads, because mums, of course, would far too sensible and sheepish to do that sort of thing. But it's just, you can barely see the crowd sometimes for kids at the front begging for shirts. It's just
horrible modern.
Absolutely, yeah. Also, they're taking the money out of charities as well, because most of those match-worn shirts are then auctioned for various charitable causes. So think of that, little 8-year-old who's flown from Australia.
This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV, it's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Ben Walker. That's our next question. And Ben is from the West Midlands, I'm presuming. He supports a club in the West Midlands. And you'll discover when I ask this question why I'm so pleased about that, because you know, Kieran, I love the West Midlands.
Yes, you do.
And I love what I can only describe as the churlishness of a lot of people. Because it suits my nature, Kieran. And Ben Walker has this question. My club, West Bromwich Albion, has some of the most reasonably priced tickets in the division, and these prices seem cheap even when compared to clubs a few flights lower. Why is this? Are West Brom a particularly generous club, or do they do this just to get bums on seats? See, this is fantastic West Midlands work, Kieran. He supports a club that has decent value tickets, and he's suspicious. he just wants to, what are they doing that? Because it's a good thing to do, Ben. Don't be suspicious. Just go, my club are charging people less than other big cynical clubs. That's a good thing to do. No, there must be some reason for it. What they're trying to get people in to see the game, are they? What are they up to?
Well, I think you've got to look at the demographics of the West Midlands. It's not the wealthiest part of the country, and therefore I think the club is wise enough to price accordingly. So as far as 25-26 is concerned, you will be able to get a season ticket if you're one of the early bird fans at West Bromwich Albion for £419, regardless of the division that they're playing. So I think that's pretty good of them. So if the worst happens and West Brom remain in the Championship, that's going to work out as £18.22 per match, which I think is fantastic value. Under 14s, season ticket, £23.
Brilliant.
Pound a match. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. So hats off to them. This is superb, and they've got some really progressive policies as well for those people who are transitioning from one age to another. So I've got a lot of admiration. So that's the what. As I always tell my students, the money's in the why. The Hawthorns has a capacity of just under 27,000. They're averaging crowds just under 25,000. And what they will do, and we've seen this in some of the comments coming out from musicians recently. So Neil Young's today, he's just confirmed that he's no longer going to be selling what they refer to as platinum tickets. And he says he's been inspired. I know this is not your favourite band, but he's been inspired by the very militant stance taken by Robert Smith of The Cure, who says, look, if we do all right from a gig, we could make more money. But we take the view is why not build up goodwill? So if you're going to Old Trafford and you spend £66 on a kid's ticket and it's a crap match, you might be inclined not to go again. If you're paying £1 a match for West Brom, you're more inclined to spend money on merchandise. You're more inclined to spend, get there a bit earlier, savour the atmosphere, and so on. And I do think West Brom have got this pretty close to spot on. They've got a pricing policy which gets the ground pretty close to full. And if you take a look at the highlights from many EFL grounds, there are noticeable gaps at quite a few Championship stadiums. Well, West Brom isn't one of them. So I do think the club here has done its homework, has realised that fans have a limited budget, but if you get them there, then there's the chance to engage with them, to get them to buy more merch, to generate that goodwill. If they do go away, they say, well, the club is only charging me £18 a match, and that still represents pretty damn good value. And that I think that buys a club a bit more time. It generates a better atmosphere because you've got more people there, and the ground. I think if you're a player and the ground looks full, that can only act as an enhancement for you as well. So all I can say is I think these are all positive reasons, Ben, and the club has simply worked out where the sweet spot is in terms of getting as many people there as possible for as much money without. If you put up the prices by a fiver, then you would lose another 3,000 or 4,000. They've done the sums. Actually, it's probably going to be slightly worse off.
Yeah, I've got a few comments on that, Kieran. I mean, first of all, after the decade and a half we've had, nowhere is the wealthiest part of the country at the moment,
true.
to be perfectly honest. Those season tickets at West Brom are incredibly good value, but I do ask you, if you're a potential West Brom fan, try and check that the season ticket you're buying isn't between Frank Skinner and Adrian Chiles, because that will materially affect your match day experience, I have to say. It's not only building up goodwill, Kieran, it's building up a future fan base as well. That's
Exactly.
the other thing, isn't it? Which is, so it's sensible business practice. And also, if you're trying to attract new players, if you can show them, clips and photographs of a full Hawthorns, and there's a fantastic atmosphere in there when it is full, then that's going to help attracting new players. Lastly, Kieran, if Jeremy Clarkson, God forbid, was listening to this, and he heard you talk about young people transitioning from one age to the other, rather than just saying getting older, he's going to have you down as one of those woke nonsense people. I can just imagine his little beetroot face getting beetrootier and beetrootier by the second as he jumps up and down on his fake farm, going transitioning from one age to the other. What is it that you'll be in his next Sunday Times column or wherever it is he peddles his stuff? Ben, I'm glad that's a good answer to the question, because I just had this image of him shaking his fist in the pub going, "Why aren't we charging more money?" I'm aware that my West Midlands accent is terrible, but I just enjoy doing it. Joshua Kunde, which is very similar to a name I used to be called when I was younger. I'm not sure. I'm happy you're laughing so much at that, Kieran. But Joshua Kunde says, with UEFA bringing in a spending cap on wages and amortised player trading, and the Premier League considering replacing their profit and sustainability rules to align with UEFA's percentage of earnings model, I was wondering which Premier League teams would have failed to comply with these rules had they already been implemented. Interesting question, Kieran.
Yes, this is spreadsheet heaven. So thank you very much, Joshua. This current season, and here we're looking at calendar years for clubs. You are only allowed to spend 80% of your revenues from matchday broadcast, commercial, plus player sale profits on player wages, plus amortisation, plus agents' fees, plus impairments. It looks as if Chelsea and Aston Villa have failed the rules. So based on whispers that we've heard from a UEFA type of direction. And what is interesting, interesting is I'm not sure it's the right word, but what does appear to be the sanction is that instead of having tournament suspensions, it looks as if UEFA are going down the fiscal route of giving clubs fines. Now, Barcelona did break the rules, I think, last season. They got a relatively modest fine. From what I'm hearing, Villa might have had a marginal fail and therefore had to pay a low amount. I think we're suspecting Chelsea to have to go and pay a bigger fine. But Chelsea haven't published their finances for last season. I don't think under UEFA rules, the sales of real estate, which are allowed bizarrely for Premier League purposes, would be allowed under UEFA's calculations. I suspect the sale of the women's team won't be allowed either, which does mean that Chelsea's top line will be that much lower. I've heard that Chelsea could be facing a substantial fine. And remember, they've not got a front of shirt sponsor. They're only in the Europa Conference, which is a fantastic competition, but it is not a fiscally fantastic competition. So those, I think, if other clubs had entered, based on my calculations, Everton, Leicester, and Forest would probably have broken the rules based on last season's figures. But we have to wait and see. And these rules are being introduced in a shadow format because the Premier League clubs couldn't really agree on a new set of financial control rules, because there is an outstanding complaint from Manchester City against the Premier League with regard not just to the historic associated party transaction rules, which the case which Manchester City quite spectacularly won, but to the new rules as well. And I think until we get some certainty, the view taken by clubs, and I fully understand where they're coming from here, is until we know what rules we can apply, let's just stick to where we are at present.
Gareth Beanie has our next question, Kieran, and it comes from an unusual place, but it's one of those questions, again, that I really like, because you think, why has this not occurred to me before? And Gareth Beanie says, I was playing Football Manager when this question popped into my head. On the game, I was signing a player and I offered him a £4,000 bonus per goal he scored. And I wonder how clubs in real life project their cash flows when they don't know how many goals a player on a bonus will actually score. Obviously, they hope he scores a full amount, but he could get anything between 0 and 25, realistically, in a season. For a bigger club, this wouldn't really be an issue. But for smaller clubs, I guess knowing their cash outflow would be very important. And also, I suppose, Kieran, if you've offered a new striker £4,000, £5,000 for every goal, and he keeps knocking them in at the end of the season when you're still not getting promoted, you're probably going to drop him, aren't you? Because you can't afford him.
Yes, I think this is an intriguing one. I was talking to somebody in football about this very issue, and he said that's why clubs are now moving away from goal bonuses for individuals, because it impacts upon decision making.
Right.
Yeah. If you're on a big bonus per goal scored, and you've got a chance of either a simple pass to somebody who's guaranteed to score,
yes.
or alternatively you having a pop yourself, it could subconsciously or consciously impact upon that decision. So what we are seeing, I think, is a greater move towards club achievements over the course of the season rather than individual, or the individual achievements are things such as being called up for international caps, winning Player of the Year awards, Ballon d'Or, and so on. If you take a look at Manchester United's accounts, for example, these are what we refer to as contingent liabilities. So this is additional amounts that the club has to pay related to a contingency, and a contingency is an unknown future event, or a future event where the probability of it occurring is yet unknown. So, and Manchester United separate those into first team appearances. So, i.e., if you work hard in training and you get picked, you could potentially get rewards. Qualification for European competitions, and then on a personal level, it does tend to be international caps and national and international awards rather than scoring goals yourself. And I think that's a very sensible approach which is being taken by clubs. Especially if that got out into the public domain. You know, he was. Why didn't he pass then? And then some investigative journalist finds out he's on 80 grand a goal. And that could turn fans against the player, and that could turn dressing rooms against the player as well.
Do you think the person responsible for drawing up contracts at Ajax is being called into the office this morning for a bollocking? And they say, you seem to have given Jordan Henderson a bonus for every extra England cap he gets. And him going, well, that was never going to happen, was it? We just kept him happy, and now suddenly Ajax are having to pay more money for the mysterious inclusion of Jordan Henderson in the England squad. Although hats off to the FA for suddenly deciding that Morgan Gibbs-White would be in the squad at about midnight last night. Clearly, they had one tweet too many. Decided, I'll put him in the squad. For the love of God,
Jordan's one of my students. He's a thoroughly decent guy, and I would say that and I appreciate this isn't a football show. He's not been picked for the squad necessarily with an expectation that he will play, but because he will show leadership. And I think leadership's a broader issue. Now, I would say that because he's one of my students, and I think he's a thoroughly decent bloke as well.
Well, if the only criteria, Kieran, was that he was one of your students and a thoroughly decent bloke, we'd be struggling, wouldn't we, really? Also, just in terms of leadership, I suspect there are people in the LGBTQ community who would dispute that, Kieran, really, when he was, sold himself as an ally to that community and then buggered off to a country that clearly isn't. But just on football alone, Kieran, he doesn't deserve to be in the squad ahead of Morgan Gibbs-White. or Adam Wharton. It's just, I'm glad to know he's a nice. He looks like a nice fella. But he's 96. That's my issue. He's older than me and you, isn't he? That's my issue. Mark Bramley has a question that we are periodically asked, so we're always happy to periodically answer questions that clearly worry our listenership. Mark Bramley says, who pays for all the costs when matches are abandoned? Obviously, there's weather, but then there's occasional terrible scenarios when a player collapses on the pitch and so on.
Right. So I contacted somebody in authority here, and their reply was, the home club bears the costs of hosting all league matches and retains all revenue. The away team bears the costs of its travel for 23 away games. If a match is abandoned and then rearranged, the home club is responsible for the costs of putting on the rearranged match, and the away club will get its additional travel expenses paid. As far as the impact upon fans is concerned, I went to the Premier League handbook, something I would never recommend unless you're struggling to sleep. And it says that if a match is postponed before the whistle blows, then you're entitled to a full refund. But if any time after the whistle has blown, you will only get a half refund for your ticket. And here's I've got from Leeds United's accounts. In the event of an abandonment of the match, you'll be entitled to receive the equivalent ticket for the subsequent rearranged match via such application as the club stipulates from time to time. The club will have no further liability, including any losses which you've incurred. So if you've gone up to Leeds and you paid for a hotel and you paid for transport and so on, tough.
Yeah,
it's the same as going to a gig, which gets postponed, which has happened on occasion.
And what about contingencies in the broadcasting deal, Kieran? So, watching the Sheffield derby yesterday, if there'd been a huge fog and that game was called off, obviously you imagine the replay of it would be on TV, but that the broadcasters wouldn't be paying any extra money for that, presumably, would they?
No. They've signed up for so many matches, and if you failed to deliver the full match, then they would effectively get that one for free. I started watching it, but I was in colourblind hell.
Oh God! Oh,
with that
crikey! Of course, yeah. Didn't it? Well, there you go, Kieran. That's part of the. It just didn't occur to me, and clearly didn't occur to the broadcasters either, really. Which is
or the clubs, or the
clubs.
And I appreciate it. I appreciate from an emotional point of view, you want to wear your colours. Absolutely get that.
Yeah, fair point. Our last question, Kieran, is an interesting one, I think, and it comes from Chris Guns. Chris Guns says, after many years of supporting Norwich, I became disillusioned with football and the money-driven emphasis of it all. I then began following my local non-league team, Staveley MWFC, of step 6 of the non-league pyramid. The club invests in the facilities and community but has no real playing budget. However, there are, and have been before, clubs at the same level that pay up to £400 a week to some players. How far down the pyramid does the money-driven success go, and how can it be sustainable at grassroots level? Should more clubs be following the model of Staveley MWFC, ensuring they're a community club, not just at their level, but at National League level? We can't all be West Park Rovers, which is a reference to our lovely made-up club. I still keep an eye on Kieran. They're doing all right.
Yes,
we're not doing too bad. It's an interesting question, Kieran, isn't it? And we've talked about this in particular with fan-owned clubs, is how far they can go. But Chris's question is sort of asking, how far down can you go and still pay your way out of? And we've seen in our book, Kieran, the eye-watering amounts of money it takes us to start a Sunday league team now, let alone move up the levels. And it does seem, as you've indicated before, that you can kind of buy your way a fair way up, can't you, Kieran, at the expense of other clubs who are trying to do the decent thing and just exist for their community rather than try and go for promotion after promotion.
That's right. It all comes down to individual benefactors.
Yeah.
If you have somebody that wants to take their local club up a few levels, then I'm aware of players as low as level 10. So here we're talking about the Hellenic League, Northwest Counties, Southern Combination. They were all leagues which we've heard of.
Yeah.
But they don't attract big crowds. If you have a person who runs a local business, who decides to get involved with their club, puts money into the infrastructure, will these people be on big money? No, you're probably talking £100, £150 a match. But over the course of a season, that's it's not enough to give up your full-time job, but it's good boot money. And that means that players will be attracted from other clubs at that level. And that's perfectly understandable if that's their motivation. And I'd never criticise anybody for going down that particular route. What I would say is it then raises the issue, as Chris implies, of sustainability. I think football, I'm increasingly coming to the view that football is not a standard type of industry in which sustainability is the ability of a company to independently pay its bills as they fall due, because so many clubs are losing money. And therefore, sustainability, you effectively have to have a fourth leg on your tripod, in the sense that you have owner support and the football club is effectively being treated as a trophy asset and is being funded as any other trophy asset. So we both know people, for example, that own racehorses.
Yeah.
That's a license to lose money.
Yeah.
If you just expand that a little bit further, you come to your local football club. There are opportunities to put money in. We've seen that. We're hoping to have an interview with an American investor of a non-league club who has made significant progress, and just to expand upon the motivations, the rewards, which are non-financial. And I think this is something which we as fans, because we get no financial reward from the success of the clubs that we support, we get an emotional reward. Well, could that actually be the same for club owners? Now, normally, the owner of a business, yes, they might enjoy the industry in which they're working in, but they are in it to make some money as well. That does not apply to football, because football is distanced and is independent from the traditional capitalist profit maximizing ethos that we see so often in a broader society.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Uh-oh, the last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
I always feel genuinely sad, Kieran, when I hear from people like Chris or meet people like Chris. And while I understand why they're doing it, I do really get sad that they've given up following a team that they followed for years, and supporting Norwich. I can't think of any other way of saying it other than it has its ups and downs, just as football commentators can't find another thing that goes up and down like a roller coaster. But it's God knows I've tried to help them, but I really understand why Chris would want to. I know Palace fans who go to Sutton now, go to Carshalton now, but in the same way as Chris, they're starting to get disillusioned with football at that level as well, because whereas 20, 30 years ago when Palace were away or you up in the northwest. If there wasn't a big game available, you'd go to a non-league team. It's the same with us. If Palace were away and we couldn't go, we'd go to Tooting and Mitcham. We'd go to Wimbledon back in the day. We'd go to Carshalton. We'd go to Sutton. We'd go to all these teams. And they were a different kind of fun, but they were fun. But now it seems that this driver of success is being emulated even further down the pyramid. So people like Chris are probably going to have to step even further down the same pyramid in a desperate search for the fun that possibly, and I hate to say this, doesn't exist anymore at that level, because everyone feels that they need to be the level above or the level above that, and they'll spend whatever money it takes.
Yep, I absolutely understand Chris's position. It's down to personal choice.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Whatever floats individual boats. Football is still, as we've said, it's the most rewarding thing outside of family.
Yeah,
I think anybody can have, as well as the most frustrating, and that's why it's a bit like family. I always say the relationship between football club and fan is a bit like a relationship between parent and child. You often don't like them, but you never stop loving them, and it's that love which keeps you going.
Well, a lovely way to end the pod, Kieran. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page and everyone who's now joined the brand new Price of Football Club. If you'd like to join the club too and get ad-free listening and invite to our monthly Q&A sessions, next one's coming up soon, I believe, bonus episodes, early access to interviews and more, then go to our website, priceoffootball.com. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on X and you can find us on YouTube. We will have an interview for you, Price of Football Club members. We've got an interview for you on Wednesday. For non-members, that interview will be available on Friday with Simon Locke from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, who spent the last couple of years going deep undercover into the finances of Roman Abramovich. Looking forward to that. Otherwise, we'll be back on Thursday with our weekly news pod. Guys just sent the stories through again. We may have to cancel Wednesdays. In the meantime, don't forget, if you have a question you'd like answered on our next show, questions@priceoffootball.com. You can follow us on X. You can find us on YouTube. You can go to that website for a book or a Price of Football t-shirt. And as I say, we'll be back on Thursday. And in the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you, as always, to everybody that's engaged with the show. And again, just like to send our love following the passing away of Sam to John. It was so proud when he was chatting to us last week, and anybody that's ever owned a dog knows that special bond that you have, and it's even greater if you've got a dog that looks after you the way that Sam assisted John. In terms of supporting the show, there's a variety of the ways that you can do that. Thank you for everybody at the club. We are looking forward. I think it's in 2 weeks. We're having another sort of private session, and we'll have a private Q&A pod as well for club members. But there's other ways, because if you want to give us some money, that's absolutely fantastic, and we're very, very grateful. But you don't have to. We cannot stress that we are not soliciting money in any way, shape, or form, and that's to give us a review. And in honour, I've actually just spent the weekend in Paris with the Baroness, because we've not seen very much of each other. So I took her to a fancy French restaurant. It's got to be said, my French isn't great. I was far better at Latin than French, which probably wasn't very practical when I was at school. But I do love seafood, and there was one other thing on the menu which says pilchard avec grillé. So I thought, I love seafood. I thought this will be fantastic. I've seen the size of European pilchards, and they'd come up and there'd be a little bit of olive oil, and they'll be encrusted in sea salt and garlic, and some French bread to go along with that. I go, really, that's absolutely fantastic. I think their equivalent of Heston Blumenthal was behind this. 15 minutes later, we had a very nice starter. The main course turned up. The Baroness was tucking into hers. And I was given a tin of pilchards, which was half opened, along with a piece of toast. And I looked up and I go, what? So I've learnt my lesson. I need to learn my French a little bit better. So in that case, if you'd like to have the show presented by Heston Blumenthal and Roland Rivron, then I think by all means do so.
Wow, that'd be an intense one.
Yes.
Roland, I think I might leave the country for that. I'd leave those two to it. I've met Heston. He's very nice. There's a lot of blanks in my memory after nights with Roland. I have to say, really. I'm not too bad on. I could speak what they call restaurant French, Kieran, enough to order. But I don't know what the French is for. Can you tell the chef he's taking the piss?
Yes,
basically. But it's nice to hear you had a romantic time in Paris, Kieran. It's a terrible condemnation of the way my mind works. I can't think of Paris without thinking of Pepe Le Pew. It's the city of love and romantic skunks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.